I think finally there's a value of just being ethical. How do we demonstrate being ethical in a public setting? Well, by being open and honest, trustworthy. I mean, it always sounds like a Boy Scout sort of thing, but it's not quite like that. We are dealing with other people's money. It would be very easy for us to say, well, it's not my money, you know, we'll just do it this way, even though it's not the right way of doing it because it's not our money. Well, it's somebody's money, it's the taxpayer's money. So to behave ethically and honestly with other people's money is obviously a key. Now, there are controls in the public sector, but it's necessary for you as an individual to demonstrate an ability to operate with a high level of confidence that you will do the right thing. One of the key behaviours or key capabilities that isn't published but is very, very important is an ability to deal with change. To give you an example, over the last 2.5 years I've worked in 3 different buildings, in 4 different departments, under 6 different ministers, and yet my organisational arrangement has not changed at all in that time. It is an unusual period of time, but an ability to deal with those sort of changes and maintain a level of output, a level of quality of work, and just a sense of humour about the whole thing is very important. Change is the natural environment in the public sector life. We have changes of government, we have changes of people, we have changes of policy, we have changes of program, we have changes of teams, because teams come together sometimes for short periods of time and then are broken up. Change is the one thing that I think most people dislike, and yet is the one fact of life in public sector management that you need to learn to deal with. And your ability to deal with change will impact on your ability to do your job. Okay, so what sort of person do I look for when I'm employing somebody in the public sector? Well, obviously from what I've said before, I'm looking for someone who's adaptable, someone who can deal with change without getting upset, annoyed, losing the plot. And it's often very difficult to find people like that. And how do you test for it? You know, in an interview situation, what sort of questions would you ask somebody? You know, how do you feel about change? Oh, I feel fine. It's not a problem. How do you test for it? Well, obviously I usually go back and ask supervisors, referees. You've got to find how that person actually works in a work environment. It's not about how they respond to questioning in an interview situation. So change, absolutely, that's the first thing. The second thing is being able to think outside the box, which is a horrible expression. But implicit in that is an ability to know where the box is. So they have to have a certain level of knowledge and understanding of the role or the policy or the program or the broader environment in which they're going to work. I'm always impressed by people who come along and demonstrate that they know more than they should on the basis of what I've read, because it means they've gone that extra mile, they've actually done some research on their own, they've identified what they need to learn to be successful in a role, and they've gone out, read it, got the information, absorbed it. So that's always a very impressive thing for someone to do. To have research skills, to be able to find information is very, very important, particularly in the public sector. I look for people who can write really well. And I guess it's difficult because, say for example, we're studying at university, we learn how to write in one particular way, and it's the one way to be successful in an assignment, or it's the one way to be successful in an exam. In the public sector, writing styles are different, writing preferences are often different. In my own case, I've written for different ministers, and they all have very different views of how they like to get information. And if you're writing ministerial correspondence, then each minister has a particular flavour that they like to see in what they're being asked to sign. So someone who can write in different styles, in different ways, is very valuable in public sector. Somebody who works well both by themselves and with a group. And you often find people that work well by themselves, and that's fine, and you'll find people that work well in a group. But to find someone who works well in both environments is actually quite rare. And yet a lot of the work that we do will be done by ourselves and then later joined as part of a contribution from within a team. So the ability to work in both environments is actually very important. It can be learnt, but if you can recruit for it, all the better. You want somebody who can communicate, not just in writing, but orally as well. You're often going to be explaining concepts, quite complex programs, to people who have no background and no understanding. When you consider that teams are formed often temporarily within the public sector, if you're the person that's going to lead a team, you need to be able to communicate the objectives for the team, the context in which it's going to operate, the objectives that it's seeking, and you've got to develop a good rapport with other members of the team to provide an ongoing point of communication to them. You need to be able to disseminate knowledge. So to be a good communicator is also very, very important. We talk about the, I guess, an intellectual ability, and I don't mean how smart you are, but an ability to analyse material, analyse large amounts of information, and be able to make sense of it, and to provide it in a simple, easy to understand way to people who don't have the same depth of knowledge that perhaps you do. So that's a very important capability for people in the public sector to have, and something that I look for when I employ people. Ultimately, we look for people who have broad levels of skill. Content knowledge is important. In some areas it's invaluable, but underlying that has to be a broad base of skills that can be utilised across different teams, different departments, different programs over a period of time. And that's the key to success in the public service, is being able to evidence those capabilities, evidence those behaviours that are valuable to the service across a career.